Greetings, everyone. This is our Area H Area Forum with Ben Maartman and Murray McNab. So welcome, everyone. I'll give a brief introduction and then hand over to our moderator, Isabelle Morris. So we are the Yellow Point Ecological Society is hosting this meeting. That's our website. We are, among other things, the people who are championing the Yellow Point Trail. We did a talk just last week on why landscape context matters in wetlands, all about amphibians and frogs and toads. We're doing another talk coming up in December on how can we protect the forest on private land with a lawyer who specialized in this stuff. And before we move in, I want to say a special appreciation to Mary Marcotte, who served our area for coming up 25 years. So thank you, Mary. And also to Colin, who has been sitting in for Mary for the last year. So tonight is our forum with Ben and Murray, and our host is Isabelle Morris from the Farmship Growers Cooperative. And with that, I'll stop sharing and hand over to you, Elizabeth. Isabelle, who's Elizabeth? Isabelle, I'll have to unmute you. Wait a minute. Could you unmute yourself?
Okay, now unmuted. Thank you. Thank you, Guy. I just want to acknowledge to start that we're on the unceded territory of the Tz'manis First Nations. I want to say thank you to both candidates, Ben Maartman and Murray McNab, for putting their candidature forward for public service position. Thank you to all Area H citizens who are here tonight to show their care about making an informed decision on November 28th. And thank you to the Yellow Point Ecological Society for putting this together. Just some basic ground rule. We just expect respectful language from each of the candidates. And also, if you get unmuted, that everybody use a respectful language and courteous conduct throughout the forum tonight. It's a very simple agenda tonight. We'll start with an opening statement for 2 minutes for each of the candidates. We'll toss a coin in a minute to find out who's going to start. While they are speaking, you can write your questions in the chat room on the side there, and I'll select some questions. And once the time comes, we'll unmute you so that you can ask your question directly to the candidates. You'll have about 20 seconds to ask your questions, no more. And the candidates will have 2 minutes each to answer the question. And then if they want to come back with an answer afterwards, or 1 minute after their 2 minute explanations. And then we'll alternate who answers first so that it seems fair during the evening. And then we'll end with the 2 minute closing statements from each of our candidates. Does that sound clear? Easy? Well, without any further ado, do we need to unmute Ben and Murray? Ian's gonna toss the coin for me. I'm terrible at it. We chose a nice nickel because it's got a beaver on it. So something that actually has a tail. And recognizing that we have had issues with beavers in the area. Okay.
Are they unmuted?
I think so, yeah. No, not Murray yet. Ben is. Murray's unmuted.
Who's going to call it?
Hello.
Who's calling it?
Go ahead, Murray. Heads.
Oops, where are we here? What is that?
You have to say it.
It
Heads.
is. It is heads. Heads.
Heads. So Murray, you're first to talk. You have 2 minutes to give us a little introduction about your platform.
Oh, good evening. Murray McNab was not born here. I was born in Murrayville, which is Langley. Moved here when I was 4. Been a long-time resident. Part of my platform is working on saving the aquifer and the water supply of the area, protecting forests on private lands. And one of the major concerns that I have is the interface between the forest lands and houses, dwellings, and farm buildings. I think we need to work towards clearing out those areas to mitigate large forest fires. Some of my background that might help you with some of this stuff at meetings at the CVRD. When I was younger, I worked as a well driller in this area, drilled the first 2 wells on the top of Woodley Range. Then I moved on. I worked for a multinational mining company that had 14,000 employees. I've also been employed at small companies where I was the only employee. I then worked for a consulting company which specialized in civil engineering projects, roads, water mains, sewers, and that sort of stuff. I worked for 7 years as with the municipality of North Cowichan, so I know a little bit about the ins and outs of the municipalities. I then worked for another engineering company doing civil works. And then finally, I'm operating my own company, McNab's Corn Maze. I believe with my experience and my background in some of these different positions, I'd be well suited for this job position should I be elected at the CVRD. Certainly appreciate your votes, and I would look forward to answering any questions you might have. Thank you. And thanks to Isabelle for moderating this.
Thank you, Murray. Yeah. Cancel that.
I'll do it.
Okay, and Ben, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Ben Maartman, and thank you, Isabelle. Thank you, Guy. Thank you to the audience and to my team and to Murray. My platform is about protecting this area, including the aquifer, the trees, the development of this area, keeping it the paradise that it is today for the future generations. I also believe that we need to work on open communications, transparency with what's happening in this area. And I also believe that we have a real vested interest in having a really established official community plan over the next few years. In all of this, how do we keep our taxes low and provide the services that this community wants? So those are my platforms, but I'm an island boy. I grew up in Arrington with 6 brothers and sisters, and Arrington was our home base, but I had a unique upbringing. When I was 13, we lived in Central America and Mexico, and I did my grade 8 in Belize and grade 9 in Mexico, or part of grade 9. This is where I really learned about diversity. I'm a worker. With all my siblings, we learned we had to earn our way. And I've worked since I've been 14. Short order cook, commercial fishing, construction work in the Yukon, and pulling chokers in the summer before I was 18. But I'm also a paramedic. I'm proud to have 39 years in a profession that helps others when they're the most vulnerable. And as a paramedic, you really get to see it all. When we moved here 15 years ago, I was the BC ambulance superintendent for the area, all this area, CVRD, the Gulf Islands, the West Coast. I was responsible for all the paramedics in this area. I know the area and the people. I'm also a lifelong learner. I love to learn, and I also like to learn not formally, but also informally. I'm a husband, a father, and I believe my greatest accomplishments are being a good partner and a good father. I'm a community person. I stand for helping those in need and respecting diverse opinions. We have something special here in Area H, and I would like to work with you to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben, if you didn't
Thank
hear.
you.
I have a few questions showing up in the chat room there. I think you can all see those, or maybe not all of them. There isn't this many yet, so should we move right ahead, Guy, and ask on you the first person? So Shannon has a question to ask here about communication. So if Shannon could be unmuted or come forward and ask her question directly to the candidates.
Shannon, can you unmute yourself? it's the bottom left below your photo, the unmute button. I'm trying to do it at my end, but not. There you go. Off you go, Shannon.
Hi, sorry, I wasn't planning on appearing on video, so I was just wondering how the candidates plan to engage with residents once elected.
Ben would be first to answer that.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Shannon. So the question is, how would I engage with the community? Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I think there's a couple of ways that I would really like to try to hear and listen to the community. To me, communication is a two-way piece. The first thing I've done is established what I have as a domain for areah.b.ca. And so when, if I am elected, I would make that go live. And much like my Elect Ben website, it's a two-way avenue for me to communicate with what's happening in, from the CBRD director role, but also what is the community's issues and needs. I think that's the first way, but that's talking about technology. A Facebook page as well for this area, I think allows for people to also to connect in, but not everybody's on websites and not everybody has technology. And so I think we need to consistently use the Take 5 and any other newsletter forums so that people can have some printed matter that can be delivered to them as well. I think we're at a bit of a deficit in this area because we don't have a regular publication that comes out weekly. But if we could eventually get something or have something that would reach everybody's doorstep, I think that would be another way to do it.
Murray, it's your turn.
Yes, I'd also establish a website, and anything pertaining with Area H would be on there. Much like Shannon has tried to fill the void that we certainly suffered in the last 8 to 12 years with no communications with what happens in the CBRD. So aside from that, the Take 5, which is a very good publication that people get out this way, there should be something in that column monthly that pertains to this area and keeps people updated. Further to that, I believe that there needs to be town hall meetings. This will of course be when COVID dies down, which it will. Town hall meetings that will have to be held, I would think, at least twice a year and in different venues. If one is held at the North Oyster Community Center, well, then another one should be held down at the Diamond. One should be held out at Coffin Point and possibly even on the Native Reserve for the people in Coffin Point to attend down there. In that way, I think we would get feedback from the people and find out what the issues are instead of keeping people in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, you have 1 minute if you have something more to add?
Well, I think what Murray has to say and everything that is really about communication needs to be consistent, it needs to be credible, and it needs to be coherent. But most of all, it needs to be relevant and timely. And those are the pieces, whatever avenues you can provide or we can put in place or I can put in place to make that happen, I just encourage it. It's one of the pillars of democracy to me.
Thank you. I have another question. The second question would come from Mike and Julia Falls about what would be the #1 issue. So maybe Mike or Julia, I don't know who asked the question, could be unmuted.
I'm working on that.
No.
I can't find them. There we are, right down the bottom. They are unmuted. Off you go, Mike. Calling Mike with a beard.
Not there, Mike and Julia Falls. Okay,
Maybe
well,
come back to them later.
Pass to the next question and then we can come back to that one. Michelle and John Plekis were asking, what kind of volunteer work have you done in the community in the last 15 years? Yes. I'm just reading the question as they come along. Yeah. Okay. It would be Marie's turn to start.
Yes, my,
Excuse me,
Oh, they're asking.
I wanted,
Okay,
Go ahead.
Mike
I
and John,
wanted
take
the
it.
question, excuse me, I'm not used to doing this, but I live on Jones Road in the Diamond area. And my question is to Ben. My question to you, Ben, is what volunteer work have you done in the Area H community in the last 15 years you have lived here?
Yeah.
Sorry, is this a question through you, Isabelle? 'Cause
That's for you, Ben.
yeah, but
It's
am I the
breaking-
response?
it's breaking, it's Murray's response. Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm just following.
Yeah, okay, she asked the questions directly to you. I just need to make sure here it is relevant to the topic tonight. If it's just personal volunteer work, or if we can focus on what work has been done for the Area H and where we're moving forward.
My question is for Ben, because I don't know Ben, and I'm just asking the question of Ben, what volunteer work has Ben been involved with in the community for the last 15 years? It's a very good question, and I think it's worth answering.
Okay, Ben, you want to answer that?
Sure, I just don't want to step on Murray's toes because he's the one to go next. That's all I'm saying.
Ben, you can go ahead. The questions asked to you. I'll put the next question forward to Mary.
Murray, are you okay with that, Murray?
That's okay with me.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I'm sorry, it's just that I thought the questions were going back and forth in an order there. Is it Myth?
So good.
Yep, thank you. You're muted, sorry. Anyway, so
You're on.
yeah, you know, I can tell you that there's a couple of different ways of whether you have a formal title within the community and you're doing volunteer work. As a paramedic in this area, when I first moved here, I was the first response on our street. I ended up helping neighbors and consistently helping neighbors, and one neighbor particularly for about 5 years until she passed away. On this street that we live on, it's also about our neighbors doing volunteer work up and down it and helping each other. There isn't a time when my phone didn't ring that I went out to help people. So the first thing is that informal way of being a really good neighbor. The second way is formally, where you have titles. So the title that I've had in this area is a director on the Farmers Institute. And I was involved with the Farmers Institute for a number of years and co-chaired it with Joanne McLeod. So there's the other aspect of community volunteerism in the last 15 years here. Thank you for the question.
Now you can say it.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Glad that answers your question. Marie, you have something to add?
Well, pretty hard for me to speak for Ben, but for myself, in the last 15 years, I guess I've been, at one time was on the Parks, I've been on the Parks Commission up until it disbanded, and I was on the Advisory Planning Commission before that. It's probably been about 15 years since I was on the Nanaimo Airport Commission. Well, that wasn't volunteer work. We've got a small stipend for that. Otherwise, much like Ben, helping neighbors when I can, sometimes snow removal, sometimes pushing trees off of people's driveways, just doing what I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Fall's back on the line, by the way, so you can ask Mike his
I
question.
want to ask that question. So there was a question earlier by Mike and Julia Falls. Do you still want to ask your question?
Sure, yes, please.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, the question is for both candidates. Basically, it's what do you consider, what do you see as the single number one issue facing Area H for the next couple of years, and what would you, how would you propose to address that issue?
go ahead.
Commissioner Ramble?
Sorry, Murray, you're first on this one.
Yes, I believe that water is going to be the biggest concern for this area in the future. And with that in mind, the aquifer that's underneath the Cassidy Airport and down through there is the most important water supply that we have, and no doubt we'll be using in the future. With that in mind, some of the industrial activity there, mainly the Schnitzer operation with their recycling, is a disaster waiting to happen, although we've already had a small disaster there with the fire. This operation has expanded immensely over the last 30 or 40 years. I believe that the CBRD needs to take a stand on it, and either it gets rolled back to the size of operation that it was approved at, or that this operation ideally would be moved to an industrial site like Duke Point. Thereby, there'd be less chance for the aquifer to be polluted. This area may not be for 20 years or 50 years. I'm sure it will be supplied by water from that very aquifer. So that's the number one concern of mine. Thank you.
Ben, it's your turn.
Thank you. Our biggest number one immediate concern is COVID. And I don't want to make anything secondary to that. We need to get through this pandemic, and we need to do it as a community. We need to be safe. But I also want to address the question, because the question really is about how do we protect our community? And one of the things that we need to talk about is water security. And Murray is right. It is about protecting the aquifers and but it's protecting all our water sources. And so the aquifer is something that's a hot issue right now, and it's immediate. And we have an industry on a site that is, I don't want to use the word criminal, but is it legal? And what should be done about that? We need to understand how it was put in place, why it was permitted to be there, why it was permitted to expand. And if we have a legal recourse, we need to be taking those steps. If we don't have a legal recourse, then we need to be, as a community, making it really clear to this company that this is not the place where they should be operating. They need to move to somewhere else. We need to be able to do that in a respectful manner, because they are an employer. They do provide something to the community in that manner, but why do they have to do it on our aquifer, our source of water, and something that we cannot replace? If it gets contaminated, it's contaminated for life. So this has to change. I don't know if that's 2 minutes or not, but that's my 2 minutes.
Yeah, you've got your 2 minutes. Excellent. Next, I think I'd take the question from Guy about the First Nations communication.
Yes, my question is to both of you. Have you had a chance to talk to anyone from the Shtaminas First Nation about hopes and thoughts that we might share in common for the future?
Ben, you're first on this one.
I feel like I just talked. Thank you for the question. So I have had a chance to meet with the new chief, Roxanne Harris. It was very interesting, chief, because a conversation, because she actually just got elected. And so when I walked in and she said, well, sit down and tell me your platform. And so I told her about protecting the community, about communications, and about keeping taxes low. And she goes, those are our same concerns. And so we had the conversation went from there, where we have some synergies. And I said, I have questions about what's happening in Area H that's surrounding them. Questions like, why does the bus transit end in Ladysmith? Why doesn't it come to Oyster Bay? Why doesn't it go all the way to the airport? If it did that, then you could connect into Nanaimo. Why does the airport see the need for putting a hotel and a gas station in the SCN Lavalin proposal that they have for down the road? It came in the Nanaimo News Bulletin last week. And when there's two gas stations, and a Tim Hortons, and a hotel less than 2 miles away in their own, what they're trying to do. And she says, those are our same questions too. And I said, well, this is about being neighbors. This is a chance to connect and all in this together, neighbors. So it was a great conversation. Thank you.
Murray, it's your turn.
Well, as it turns out, I just talked to Roxanne Harris today. We only had a few minutes. She was busy, and it was the first chance I had to talk with her. I was really asking her about putting a couple signs up on land that is theirs, and what she said would be no problem. Myself and our family have a long history with the local First Nations people, with having many of them worked on our farm for my father and having employed some of them since then. I understand some of the problems that they have and that they're trying to overcome, and realize that there should be far more working together between REH or the CVRD in general and the Stamanis First Nations group. So I would hope that that could take place, and it would encourage more of that from the CVRD. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Ben, did you have another word to say in response to that, or?
Yeah, when I was a BC Ambulance superintendent, I worked with the Penelakut group, the First Nations on the Penelakut Island. And they had a community responder system in place that was struggling and needed support. And so through working with the CVRD emergency manager and working with my contacts at BC Ambulance, we worked with them to help create training, create supplies and supports for them to continue with that community responder program. So working with First Nations for me has been something I've done for a long time, and really enjoy the opportunities if that happens here.
Thank you, Ben. Next,
Hang on, Murray might have a comeback as well.
oh, sorry. Murray, did you have a comeback on that?
Not really. I think I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Following question that might be of interest to everybody was from Eddie Fishlock about the community plan.
Edie, you're
is the
unmuted. Go
question for
ahead.
both candidate?
Yeah. Hello?
We got you.
Oh, good. Okay. So, yeah, I was talking to Ben before, and he'd mentioned that he was looking at updating the community plan, which I think is an excellent idea. I didn't realize there was a community plan, but it's obviously better to update it if it's over 30 years old. So what would you see as being the thing that might need to be updated in the community plan? What's going to be a way that we can have some input into it?
Murray, you'd be the first one to answer this one.
Yeah, the official community plan certainly has not been updated in a long time. Unbeknownst to most of us, the CVRD started down the trail of a harmonized official community plan for all of the CVRD. That would take the 9 rural areas, take all the different items from each plan, blend them all together, but there was a promise that nothing would be changed or deleted from any plan. Quite a few of us sat at a meeting at the community center, and that was stated loud and clear. I then had occasion to be at an APC meeting a few months later, where the same CVRD people trotted out some new maps that were going to replace the old maps. And it was pointed out quite clearly by Mike Fall that this was a change, and that people that sat in that very same room and listened to the promises would not tolerate that. So I think they've kind of gone back to the drawing board. They want to get a harmonized community plan, official community plan for all the 9 areas, which I think is a good idea, which would cover some of the basic things. But then there's a promise that that would need some updating. And there was a promise that each area, as us in Area H, would have a small part that would be on the side that would be specific to the issues that are in our area, because our area has issues and different qualities than, say, something halfway up the Malahat or something out near Lake Cowichan. So I think it's a good plan, but they have to get the harmonized one sorted out first, update it, and then we must get the Area H addendum or whatever it is updated. Thank you.
Ben, you next. Thank you, Murray.
So thank you for the question. The official community plan to me is probably one of the most critical things over the next 2 years that you're going to ask the director to champion. It is one of the key documents that decisions are made off of to say what gets developed and what doesn't get developed in an area. These are where what zoning applies, what things can happen within a piece of property. It really reflects the way that we want to live, and it extends that out for decades. And it's something that is a living document, though. In a couple of decades, it needs to be revisited again. You know, and Murray's right. Like, they're harmonizing a good chunk of it, but one size doesn't fit all, and that's why we have to look at that piece that reflects our neighborhood. And we need to be able to drill down to what I would call the kitchen table level, where that we can get the community talking about everything that's important to them, so it can get reflected in those focus groups and passed on up into an entire plan. So this plan represents what the neighborhood and what the community really wants to see in terms of development over the next 10 and 20 years. And development talks about what we are willing to let go of in terms of having things happen and what we need to protect. I don't know if I saw 15 seconds there or not, but it felt like it. Thank you.
Murray, you have a short reply or something to add? You have one.
Just one small thing that I think all communities, and especially ours, is witnessing. Something has to come back where second dwellings are allowed, and possibly bigger than the 650 or 1,000 square feet that are allowed now, for family circumstances where elderly parents are living on a piece of property. If a son or daughter could move back, live on that same piece of property, they could offer care to the aging parents and keep them out of the healthcare system for longer. So I think that's something that has to be looked at, or whether they bring back something that was disappeared, was where you're allowed to subdivide 5-acre lot into 2 lots for a family member. Thank you.
Ben, did you have another little something to come back?
Well, yeah, I think what Murray's talking about is really about the issue of how are we going to support people living in this area and what kind of development we want to do. You know, one example is that this is what the rice farm looked like when Mr. Rice died 4 years ago. And this is what it looks like today. This is what the OCP can speak to. Do we want development done in a way that we clear-cut properties? Do we want development done in a way that we have subdivisions without water? So that's what the OCP really is intended for, to put that out in front of it so we don't end up with pieces and we're wondering how did they end up like this and why?
Thank you, Ben. And that maybe brings us to another question that had been asked earlier by Marshall to everyone regarding Yellow Point Meadows.
Okay, well, thank you for asking. My question is a question for Murray. I really appreciated that you putting your note on your website about being involved in the Yellow Point Meadows. And so my question is your website states you are one of the developers of Yellow Point Meadows. Can you tell us about this development and how it reflects your principles, ideas of development in Area H, and how you addressed water concerns?
Yes, thank you for your question. As was pointed out in the last disclosure statement for 2018, that I owned a 10% interest in a company that owns that land. Do not need to be disclosed, because if you look at the disclosure criteria, I think it says you have to own 33%. So it was all out there, even though a candidate at the last election sort of lit his hair on fire and came a bit unglued. But this property is in the ALR, the Agricultural Land Reserve. Should never have been there. And this is one of the problems with the Agricultural Land Reserve. The next piece of agricultural land is about 2 kilometers away. Strangely enough, it jumped over top of an operating dairy farm when the ALR came in. So this piece of property was 141 acres with roughly probably 8 to 10 acres that was real arable land, which was being used for subsistence farming. So the last cash crop that came off of there was marijuana, which was before marijuana was legalized. So what we've done is, according to the LR, minimum lot size zoning here is 5 acres. The Agricultural Land Commission came back and pointed out where there was several pieces of land that should be kept as 10 acres. And there's 2 other pieces, one's about 12 acres and one's 18, that will contain 2 of the fields that were productive. We're quite sure that this, well, it's already producing more now with a lady that has 60 goats on one of the pieces of property. So I don't have any maps or plans for show and tell. Unfortunately, in this area, when you sell property, the new owners can do what they like. Unbeknownst to us, even though we'd asked for a buffer to be left of trees, the new owner, who happened to be Mr. Rice, bought a 10-acre piece and a 5-acre piece, whereupon he called in logging contractors and he clear cut. Now, this is unfortunate, but had absolutely nothing to do with us. So the clearing that we've done there is, as per the Ministry of Transportation and Highways, a 20-meter strip has been cleared for the right-of-way. So in closing, any small pieces there, hopefully the people would dig ponds, store water in the wintertime, and this property in the end will be far more productive than it ever was as one piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be, Ben, if you have something to say. You have
I have 2 minutes or?
2 minutes, yeah.
Thank you.
It's not a recall.
I go down Yellow Point Road and I drive by the Yellow Point Meadows and I feel sad. I think this is a prime example of a development to make money, and the trees get stripped, somebody sells them, makes money off of it. Whether it's the developer or the person that they sell the land to, it's done. This piece of this farm, 140 acres, is broken into lots of parcels, $4. You know, it's about making money, and it's Humpty Dumpty. This isn't going to get put back together again. And so this is about developing, and Murray's a developer, and it's whether this is what the community wants. And I'm also really concerned because water is something that is precious to us. You go on the BC Registry for Wells, and the wells on this properties range from 0 gallons per minute to a couple at 0.5 gallons per minute, up to a max, I think, of 4 gallons per minute. These properties are never going to get farmed. They don't have the water needed to sustain a residence. So it just, I guess, sad and Humpty Dumpty is what comes to my mind.
Murray, you have 1 minute for a comeback.
Yeah, well, the facts and figures on the well production aren't correct, I'm sorry, because every well there to be approved by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure has to have over half a gallon a minute. I myself live on a 5-acre piece that has a well that produces less than a gallon a minute, and we do very well with 2 residences. So there are wells there. There's one that said 4 gallons a minute. It produced upwards of 20 gallons per minute, but that's what it was registered at. So there's lots of water there for residents. And as I say, no one, and I mean no one in this area, is irrigating land out of a drilled well. That's just horse muffins. Ben, with the dairy farm, he would be irrigated for a well because he has a well in the Cassidy aquifer. No one here drilling in the rock gets enough water to irrigate even their garden. So the people would have to store surface water, much like we do at the farm. We have a water license for 80 acre feet of water, which falls from the sky every year. So there's lots of water there for irrigating, and there's lots of water there for residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Ben, did you have another minute you wanted to come back at this one?
Well, I guess I can just point out that if you went along those lots along Yellow Point Road and you went them one at a time, the first one's 3 gallons per minute at 275 feet. The second one's 3 gallons per minute at 275 feet. The third one's 2 gallons per minute at 270 feet. And the fourth one actually is 0 gallons per minute is what's recorded on the BC Registry of Wells at 116 feet. And then the last one is 1 gallon per minute at 305 feet. That's the data, that's the evidence. It's what's written on the BC Registry. And that, is just very little water for residents. You are not going to farm those properties.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you to both of you. I do have 1 or 2 other questions. There's one that actually came from me that I'd like to ask about the question of food security in our area, and if it is part of the area plan, and how is that linked to, well, we just talked about the water, of course, but is there any provisions or discussions going on about food security being produced in our area? And it was Murray's turn.
No, I think it's mine.
It's yours. Go ahead.
I think, are you right, Murray? Or
I think so.
okay.
Might have been Ben.
So the question is whether food security part of the discussions or whether food security is important. Just want to make sure.
My question, I guess, is where are the discussions in the area, I guess in the community plan, about food security in Area H? And is there talks about that at the community plan level?
So food security often comes in with understanding the breakdown of what your area it consists of. So Area H goes way west away from us. It's half of our area, over half is forestry. Another quarter is agriculture, and one other quarter is what we would say zoned, is within the zoning in our official community plan. But the issue that you're talking about is food production and how do we maintain the security of local food production. And that piece is contained. The rules come in with the Agricultural Land Commission and what land they put on ALR, and the rules around ALR are based at the province level. But we have influence in it because it is something that we have to say as a community that we value, that we see farms and farm production and even places that aren't farms that are producing food as being very, very important. And so it's about having a healthy community. food security is a pillar to a healthy community. And it's a way that we can put that into the OCP in a way that say, this is what we value in this area. And we want our farm stands. We want to be able to go to the different places that provide the food, and that gives us not only healthy food, gives us security of really.
Everything okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Just cutting out a little bit, Ben, at the end there, the last couple of words.
I don't want a
Murray?
100-mile diet. I want a 100-meter diet.
You'll have to swim across the lake. Murray, your turn.
Obviously, food security is very important. Every municipality has it written into their bylaws. I'm not sure if our OCP has it. It all sounds good. And then many municipalities and even in Area H sometimes, when farmers happen to spread manure or shoot at offending animals that are damaging their crops, well, there's an uproar. So yes, we should support farming, and food security is very important. The island has been shown it has about a 3-day supply of food, but some of these things are at the provincial level. Just down the road on Quesnel Lake, when Lloyd Hebert sold out, he had grown hundreds of thousands of tons of potatoes on that property. It's now producing pot. But that has nothing to do with what the CVRD can do. Some of these rules come from higher above. What they need to do is, pass on to the CVRD board, which hopefully one of us will be a part of, and get that message up to the provincial level that good farmland should not be used for pot production and should be used for food. The problem is that farmland, there's far too much of it around. And in our area, 90% of it, I'll say, is used for growing hay or grass. The lowest form of agriculture there is. On some actual working farms, it provides some income selling hay to the horse people, which helps to support the rest of the farming activities. But just growing hay for the sake of hay is one of the lowest forms of agriculture, and it's not feeding very many people. So yes, it should be encouraged. Food security is paramount, and we must work towards that. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Ben, you have a 1 minute to respond to that.
Yeah, Murray touches on how this kind of topic can morph out, and you're trying to put all the pieces together with this. And it's like a jigsaw, and you have to flip the pieces over to really see them, to know how to put it together. But as you flip these pieces over, and Murray talks about, well, hay production is the lowest form, but to sustain a cattle farm like we do, we can't do it if we can't produce hay and food for our animals. So production of food for animals is actually a critical part of my contribution to local food security. So, but we all have to do things. I've learned one thing about farmers, and that they have to be ingenious. And I'm sure Murray's an example. This is how we can do it with a McNab, with this. But growing pumpkins isn't necessarily for food. But we have to sustain ourselves, and that's critically important, because if I can't do my pumpkins or I can't do my hay, I'm not producing other food. So it's really about a lot of different pieces to make it all work.
Thank you, Ben. Murray, you have 1 minute for if you have something to add.
Yeah, some of that is quite true. The simple fact on our small farm, the corn maze and the pumpkin patches help to buy tractors and equipment, which are then shared with the people growing real food. And I guess on the hay thing, we should all be vegans, and then we wouldn't have to worry about any meat production. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. There was another question from, trying to see, Ladysmith and District. I don't know who, there's no name on this one.
Hysterical.
There's a question about garbage pickup.
Here we go. There's two questions, actually. One of them is the garbage pickup in the area H. Do you support it? And the second question would be, how would you feel about the bus link from Nanaimo Airport to Ladysmith? Would you support it or not?
Ben, do you want to answer this two-part question, or maybe we can, we don't have that much time to split it into two questions. Maybe we should just split it into two questions. So what first about garbage?
Garbage pickup for area H. Is that that's the question, right?
Correct.
No, I'm not for this. And I'll tell you why. We have way too much garbage. And why do we have way so much garbage? And we are a consumer community, you know, like we just consume. And so one of the things that they're talking about with climate change and trying to deal with things is stop consuming so much and stop producing garbage. So let's move back a little bit to talking about our pioneers that came here. Irene Trudell had zero garbage. She was my neighbor. She was a pioneer of this area. Why does she have zero garbage? It's because she does not believe anything that she had would go to waste. She put it to a use. And so my challenge for us is not to say, let's have garbage here so we produce more garbage. Let's go the other direction. We won't need it because we aren't going to be producing garbage. Let's look after our climate and the pollution and our environment.
Thank you. Murray, do you want to answer the part about garbage now? And we'll do the bus in the second part of the question.
So I'll ramble on about both of them. I've been at several impassioned meetings at the North Oyster School over garbage. There's a rather robust couple there at one of the last meetings that claimed they had no garbage. And I'm quite sure either they were burning their Twinkie wrappers or eating them. So I'm not sure which. Most of us have some garbage. Myself, I would just as soon not see garbage pickup. But if you're a representative of this area, you should represent the majority of the people of the area. If there was a vote or something that most of the people wanted garbage pickup, I think we should move towards that. Garbage pickup may decrease some of the garbage being tossed beside the road. I doubt in the one example near the subdivision where 5 bags of trash were tossed, I picked them up and confirmed with the police that it indeed come from a drug lab. Another time picked up 5 bags of garbage down near Yellow Point Lodge. It was lawn clippings and all those sort of things that could easily have been disposed of for free at the Peerless Road site. I do agree with the recycling because most of us recycling, although it's not free, it's very economical. You're paying for it anyways. A lot of stuff can go into your recycle bin. So should we produce less garbage? I'm all for that, but if elected, I would represent the people of the area. Now, if I can move on to what I call the Airbus 3000, the bus in Ladysmith. Ladysmith, bless their heart, bought a couple of trolleys at an outrageous price, and that was the start of the Airbus 3000, where most of the time that's all they did was haul air around. So this is the problem with this area, and you could call them the county lines, the line that separates the CVRD from the RDN. Unfortunately, our buses, they claim, have to go to Duncan. Well, very few people are wanting to go from Ladysmith to Duncan. A lot more people would rather go to the Nanaimo Airport, to the University of Nanaimo, Nanaimo Hospital, to many other things in Nanaimo. Something has to be done to throw out this idea that transportation has to be linked within the CVRD as opposed to where people want to go. So I'd be in favor of them changing that so that somehow buses could go to Nanaimo rather than going to Duncan. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Ben can give you a minute and a half to answer the bus question.
Well, thank you. The bus link is important, but the issue of being buses is really what we need to be looking at. We need buses because, as well as simply as Roxanne Harris says, her people can't get to work. There's one reason. We need buses because we need to people not to be using cars, reduce our greenhouse emissions. We need buses because it's going to connect our kids with other opportunities. So why don't we have these? You know, Area A, the RDN in Area A, the bus goes to Gould, almost to Gould Road and turns around there. If they continued down Cedar Road and went to the airport, they actually would save themselves distance than sending a bus from Nanaimo out to the airport and Nanaimo out to Gould Road. They actually would be reducing the number of kilometers. Why can't they continue from Ladysmith to North Oyster, as I mentioned already, out to the airport? It makes connective sense. And I think other transit systems have faced this and resolved it. And to me, this is one of those things that we need to resolve. It's going to help us in the long run with a lot of different issues. Hope that's a minute and a half.
Minute 22. Good job. We would have another minute. Guy, do we have until 8:30 or until 8 here?
We're good till 8:30. Yep.
Oh, okay.
We could go. Okay. So Murray, you'd have another minute for if you have something to add about these two topics.
I don't think I have anything else to add to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ben?
Well, Murray is just mentioning about the role of the Area H director with garbage is that the job is to listen, and that is exactly right. But, you know, you asked my opinion about what garbage is, but if you ask my opinion about what the community wants, then I think that, you know, this is where Murray and I are both aligned. We want to listen to what you have to say. We want to hear what it is. And if there's a certain way that you want, the community wants something done, then that's the representative for you. That's what you want out there to be able to speak for you. You want a person that can speak and have a voice, no conflicts of interest on anything, and be able to come to what you want as a group.
Thank you, Ben. If there's been comments coming in as well as questions, some of the questions are very long preambles to them. If you could ask your questions a bit more concisely, that would be helpful to me. Or if there is a question, because even sometimes there isn't a question mark. So there was from Donna, it was Marshall though. There was a bit more discussion perhaps on the Yellow Point Meadows.
Okay, hi Murray. Again, you mentioned your website states that you'd recuse yourself from any considerations of development that might be put in as a conflict of interest as a result of your investment there. How will you be able to represent the interests of the residents concerning this development if you are absent from the discussion? Because if you're a land developer yourself, perhaps you will bring certain bias about the development in Area H. I think voters would appreciate hearing your views on this question about how you can balance that when you have to be absent. Thank you.
Yes, I think I could handle that quite nicely, because if things are not zoned, if something is coming forward as rezoning, that is quite different than someone that is doing something that's well within the zoning. So it's when the rezoning is happening, that densification can happen, smaller lots or whatever, or something moved to commercial or industrial. If something isn't being rezoned, then obviously it's something that has been agreed upon with the OCP and it can go forward. There's no question with that. I would be against things being rezoned to allow more density. But at the same time, this is why you have an APC, which hopefully represents the community. And when they put forward a recommendation, the biggest thing is that the director takes that recommendation down to the board. We've seen it in the past where the APC has made a decision, the director somehow gets confused between here and Duncan and votes the other way on it. And that should never happen. I mean, that's why we have an APC, and the director must take their recommendation to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray.
Okay. So a couple of things I need to unravel here on this question. I think number one, conflicts of interest for a director need to be, well, we watch a lot of it with the we and everything that's happening nationally with, you know, conflicts of interest. And I think conflicts of interest need to be really carefully monitored. And where conflicts of interest arise. And this, you know, Murray talks about, you know, densification, rezoning, and smaller lots. Well, that is what happened at Yellow Point Meadows. You have 140 acres going to 5 lots along the road and to a number of lots inside, or parcels inside of the remainder of phase 2 and phase 3. Murray talks about process and, you know, and conflicts of interest and members, and on his website, he says, members of the Advisory Planning Commission stepped aside at the time of the application due to a perceived conflict of interest. There was no voice for the community from the APC, according to this. Instead, the staff of the CDRT took this file, reviewed it, and made recommendations regarding the subdivision. This wasn't the voice of the community. And Mike Fall tells me over and over again, we need a check and balances with the CDRD because it doesn't represent our community. The director represents the community and through it, also the different commissions and committees. So I am concerned that there's a conflict of interest through this and that it doesn't, you know, impact your representative at any discussions. 2, thank you.
Thank you. A 1-minute reply. Murray, do you have another comeback for 1 minute on
Yeah,
this
I guess
topic?
we've just gone straight to the subdivision, and I don't remember there being a rezoning application for that at all. So whatever happened there, there's 3 things you can do with agricultural land. You can apply to subdivide within the ALR, which is happening there. The land is staying in the agricultural land reserve. You can get a special interest or a special use of ALR land, or you can take it out of the ALR. So this land, even the rock strip there that you can literally land a small plane on, has not been taken out of the ALR. It's all still in the ALR, and it will produce much more when all these small farms are operational than it has in the last 30 years as a large piece. So I think I'd be a little smarter than Justin Trudeau and realize what a conflict of interest is, or even a perceived conflict of interest. So I'm sure I can distance myself from any decisions along those lines. Thank you.
The issue of conflict of interest, did I get my 1 minute here?
Yes.
The interest of conflict of interest, though, is that if there's a discussion around a water line going down Yellow Point, it's in your benefit to have that happen because you have properties from 0 gallons per minute as recorded to 0.5 to 3 gallons per minute on these properties that you say are still in the ALR and are going to produce more. There is no water to produce it. We didn't buy a farm until we knew we had 20 gallons a minute. It's just not feasible to do any farming, agricultural, or with livestock without water. Doesn't happen. I've learned that much farming in the last 15 years.
Thank you, Ben. We have a couple other questions. Guy, do you want to bring one at a time about
Sure,
the Yellow
yeah.
Point Trail?
Very simple. What are your thoughts about the proposed Yellow Point Trail as a multi-purpose trail around Yellow Point Road, Cedar Road? And yeah.
I lost track of who answered first earlier.
I think it's me this time, right, Murray?
I believe.
Yeah, thank you. The Yellow Point Trail for me is really a safety issue. And when I look at that, I look at the safety of the kids in the area, of neighbors going to from neighborhoods, from people wanting to move with bicycles or horses or just walking. And it's something that I just applaud. I support this type of initiative that comes from the grassroots and that the community hears about and the community has a say and embraces. We have issues to work through though. While it sounds good and it is safety, there is an exorbitant cost that will have to get paid somewhere along the line. How do we make that happen? How do they make it happen? They've already got things in place. I know the federal government, the provincial government wants to get COVID economy rolling again after COVID. So maybe there are going to be opportunities there. But the other pieces with it is, land ownership along the way. Like, well, people don't own the land necessarily on the right of way, but they have sort of invested interests. And how do you make all those things work? But lastly, about this whole thing, I just applaud people that have initiative in this community. I just applaud people that really want to make something happen that is positive and really adds to the safety of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Murray, you want to say your...
If I could add, well, my candidacy nomination has not been sponsored by Yes. I'm in favor of this trail. I mentioned that at the last election. A person that ran against Mary 2 or 3 elections ago had certainly put it forward. So Yes has come a little bit lately, and it's good to see them carrying on. I'm all for this trail. I do believe, I think I mentioned a hard surface trail. When I mentioned that, it would just be a road widening, which is not as good as a separate trail. If it's a separate trail, it should not be hard surface, because in this area, walkers and horseback riders are more important than getting bicyclists coming in from all over the island to ride around the Yellow Point Trail. So I'm in favor of it. Many places along Yellow Point Road, there's ample room for a trail on one side, because unlike modern roads, the actual paved area is not in the center of the right of way. Along in front of my house, the edge of pavement might be 6 feet from my property line, whereas the other side of the road, there's 25 feet. So yes, a trail is a great idea. Much like Colin did with the North Oyster Historical Society, there was money to go towards paving the parking lot. Well, I've asked him, and did he give 100% of the money to North Oyster School? No. He asked them to put up 20%, and the gas tax put up the other 80%. These ventures like the Yellow Point Trail, any level of government is going to want to see some initiative from the locals as far as raising some money or doing some work in kind so that they'll put money towards it. So I'm all in favor of it. If it happens and it's a separate trail where there's lots of room in some places, no room in others, I think it should be for non-motorized walking, jogging, and horses. Thank you.
Ben, you have 1 minute to respond if you have something to say.
Yeah, I think that the group that's involved is following the right process. And I think that that's key in this, that they are going to follow the right steps, get a right plan involved, get community involvement, get the funding in place. And we will see how long this unfolds, whether this becomes something that is over a few years or over many years. I just want to mention though that Murray mentioned about being sponsored by Yes. I'm not sponsored by Yes as well. You know, I'm here to represent any group and any diversity. And the other thing about Colin getting the paving done at the North Oyster Community Center, the community got the paving done. That's community dollars getting it done. And I applaud the people that made that work. I think that was a combination of the efforts of North Oyster Historical Society, and and also the director at the time. Thank you. Murray, no laughing.
It's just the hysterical seemed a little funny, but you go, Marie.
Just a Freudian slip, but yes, the money indeed is, I don't agree in our situation out here in paying the gas tax or in places where there's absolutely no other way of getting around, but we do pay it, and it's good to see some of it coming back to the community, much like happened over at this Speedway Hall where they got the parking lot paved. Environmentally friendly, no, but it's certainly better for the parking lot. So a trail, yes. I think people have to show some initiative on raising some funds for it. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one other question, one last question before the final wrap up. I think, Guy, you had something about housing in our area.
Yes, it's a question. As our new regional director, you will also sit on the CVRD board governing the whole of the CVRD. And so many of our young people just are really struggling with the cost of housing. They find it impossible to be able to buy a house, and the rents are getting really expensive, even $3,000 a month in Duncan. But yet local people need to live here. What's your take on measures we can take in the CVRD and in Area H to enable young people to have a secure, affordable place to live?
Ben, you're first on this one.
Oh, am I? I thought Murray was this time.
Oh.
That's what my advisor said next door.
Okay, that's fine. Love this question. Thank you. Housing and how do we, at a local level, is it a local level issue? And you know, it's all our issue. If we can't get people and kids place to live and parents able to come here and support me or my kids coming here and supporting me as I get really old, like what the heck's happening? Like how do we look after ourselves, and how do we look after our kids and they look after us? You know, it's really intriguing. But the funding that comes for this often comes from the provincial level. But what the CVRD can do, and this is the part that the director can get involved in, is how do you leverage that funds? Like 2 years ago, the provincial government came out and said, we've got $1.8 billion to put into communities. Communities step up and tell us how you want to spend. And that's the connection with what your director needs to be doing for you. It's about connecting in with opportunities provincially, federally. What are those opportunities? And getting those dollars down to the local level where you know it can be spent. Affordable housing can be worked out. The official community plan will tell you where it can get worked out. So while we're getting the funding, you tell us where supporting housing can be. Housing for youth, housing for elderly. This is how it can work. True, thank you.
Thank you. Murray, you have something to say? 2 minutes.
Yeah, so some of that comes back to the CVRD, the local representative, and the official community plan that we're going to have updated. If we would like a person that wants their son or daughter, cousin, whatever, to move back and into a house that is larger than the prescribed 650 square feet that it is now, then we need to have provisions in the OCP or in Area H's section of that OCP that will allow for those things. Yes, it's increased density, but if someone has 5 acres and is willing to sign a covenant on both sides that the property, if it's subdivided, is kept by those 2 family members for at least 5 years, make it 10 years, whatever you like, then that allows someone to have an affordable piece of property. So the OCP is what's going to have to reflect the wishes of the community. I know there's money available from the provincial government, but often that money goes to the more urban centers. And I know it's hard to imagine Ladysmith is urban, but they're going to get the money far faster than anywhere in Area H. And is that a good thing? Probably, because it's closer to services and transportation, where to have subsidized housing out in the tip of Yellow Point probably doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Ben, you have 1 minute if you have something to add.
I just appreciate that we are talking about this. I think affordable housing, homelessness, issues that are seem to be at a provincial level really are issues for all of us. And we need to be able to connect, because who knows their community better than all of us? And this is where we can make a difference and stand up and be good neighbors, be a healthy community, and help people that are vulnerable. And I just think it's the director has a chance to be your voice on these issues. Thank you.
Marie, you have 1 minute if you wanted to add something, and then we'll move to the closing statement.
Yes, I think a part of that picture has to be employment. And Area H cannot expect everybody that lives here to go elsewhere to get employment. Some people are going to have to earn a living here. They can't all make a fortune off of farming. So there is going to have to be some home-based businesses, some industrial, some commercial. So I think we have to be a balance of, absolutely no growth or NIMBYism or bananas, and have some jobs for the people so that someone can stay here. My son, for instance, is up in the Northwest Territories, doing very well, bought a house. That's something that would never have happened down here if he just stayed here. So sometimes young people need to move away for a while. Will he end up back here? I would hope one day, but it's a bit of a harsh reality for the young people today. We should do what we can to help the less fortunate and just take care of the people that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I think at 8:20, start on the wrapping up comments. Who started? So Murray, you want to offer us your closing statement for 2 minutes?
Okay. In closing, I believe that I would be a good choice for director for Area H. I have a long history here. I've worked in quite a few jobs that would benefit me when at the CVRD table, whether it's talking about water and sewer in the south end of the regional district or in our area, because there will be proposed water mains one day. I have some experience in well drilling, so I know something about the aquifers around here. I've volunteered and been involved in many of the different committees, including the volunteer fire department. Joined it when I was 16 and certainly enjoyed my time there. The Airport Commission, the Parks Commission. I would like to work towards getting the Parks Commission revitalized, although I have received a letter that did not come from the area director, but came from the chair of the CVRD, appointing me to the new parks, not a parks commission, but an advisory council. So it seems to me that the operation of the parks or the maintenance has been taken away from us. And if we talk about the environment, it doesn't make sense to be sending a big truck up from Duncan to take care of something in the park up here that volunteers can take care of. I believe that the APC should be representative of the area and that it should have a strong voice in what happens in this area. The director must take that down to Duncan, to the whole board, and that's what I promised to do. I promised to have better communications, which is what's really been lacking in the last 12 years. This is very important so that people know what is being proposed. I'd work hard to get this harmonized OCP together and get the input with public meetings from the area residents on what they would like to see in Area 8's portion of the community plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Ben, it's your turn.
Thank you, Isabelle. I want to be your representative. You know, I've heard the questions that came in today and I'm learning from them. The communication question, the issues, the number one single issue that we think is in front of us, the aquifer was mentioned. What kind of volunteer work have we done? What's our connections with the First Nations? What's about the community plan? Yellow Point Meadows, food security, garbage pickup, bus links, Yellow Point Trail, affordable housing. Great questions, and thank you. But I would like to close where I started. We have something really special here in Area H, and I'd like to work with you to keep it that way. We will face a lot of pressures to change over the next decades. And I simply want to represent you. I don't have any conflicts of interest. What I have is passion, skills, and ability to work well with others. But I want to add, I hold myself to a standard that's been consistent throughout my life, and it's my mom's standard. Would my mom be proud of me? And I would like to share that I'm hosting 2 more Zooms on November 19th and 24th. For anyone that's interested to follow up with me, you can see my details on my website. But lastly, I encourage everyone to vote. But these are strange times. We're in a pandemic and into a second wave. Please take care of yourself, your loved ones, and your community. We will get through this together. And thank you to the hosts, to Murray, to my team, and to all of you. I truly appreciate the time you have given tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. There is 5 minutes there. Guy, how were you planning
I think we've come to the wind up. I think the main thing is to thank you, Isabelle, and your trusty sidekick, Ian. So have fun with this. If you scroll down on your screen under your photo, you'll see a thing called reactions when you can actually clap hands like that. So you can all sort of have fun with your internet. And Ben's website is www.electben.ca and Murray's is www.electmurraymcnab.ca. So over to you to close it, Isabelle.
Thank you, everyone. And hopefully you had most of your questions answered. If not, you are free to contact the candidates personally. Thank you, everyone. Good luck at the election.
Bye, everyone.
Good night. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you, Murray.